Imagine your community is preparing for climate impacts, ecological change, and social vulnerability. Would you spend the next budget only on adapting to damage, or only on cutting future emissions?
I would have thought those were two separate jobs. Adaptation deals with what is happening now, and emissions cuts deal with what happens later.
That separation sounds tidy, but this report argues that the real world is much more connected.
Connected how? Between climate and people?
Between climate, ecosystems, biodiversity, and human societies. Decisions in one part of that system can affect the others, so looking at only one piece can miss the larger risk.
So a climate plan is not just an environmental plan.
Exactly. It can also involve social and economic questions, because vulnerability and adaptation depend on how human systems interact with environmental change.
What report are we talking about?
Climate Change 2022: Impacts, Adaptation, and Vulnerability.
That sounds less like a single experiment and more like a huge synthesis.
That is the right way to think about it. The Working Group II contribution to the IPCC Sixth Assessment Report evaluates scientific literature on climate impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability.
So the useful question is not simply, is climate change happening?
Right. The focus here is what climate change means for natural and human systems, how vulnerable they are, how they can adapt, and how those choices connect to a livable future. Here is the problem the report makes harder to ignore. Climate risk does not stay inside one category.
Meaning a change in climate can become an ecosystem issue, then a social or economic issue?
That is the kind of interaction the assessment examines. It brings climate, ecosystems, biodiversity, and human societies into the same frame, rather than treating them as isolated topics.
Why is that important for ordinary decisions?
Because adaptation can look different depending on what you are trying to protect and who is vulnerable. A response that makes sense from one narrow perspective may overlook consequences elsewhere.
And adaptation itself is not enough?
The report emphasizes that adaptation and reducing greenhouse gas emissions can come together. It describes that combined process as climate-resilient development.
So the question is broader than how do we defend ourselves from climate change?
Much broader. It is also, how do we develop in a way that responds to impacts, reduces emissions, and supports a livable future for people and biodiversity?
That sounds like a coordination problem.
It crosses disciplines and scales. The assessment connects natural science with ecological, social, and economic evidence.
And looking only at the global level would not tell the whole story.
Exactly. The report includes observed impacts and future risks from global to regional scales, because its assessment is designed to examine climate change at more than one geographic level. The method matters, because this is not a study where researchers recruit participants, assign treatments, and report one effect size.
So what did the IPCC actually do?
It produced a comprehensive assessment of scientific literature relevant to climate change impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability.
So it asks what the accumulated research says, rather than relying on one dataset.
Exactly. The assessment integrates evidence across natural, ecological, social, and economic sciences.
Why combine all of those fields?
Because the subject is interaction. Climate, ecosystems, biodiversity, and human societies are linked, while vulnerability and adaptation involve questions that cross several fields. A narrow method would not match that broad question.
Does the assessment stay at the global level?
No. One highlighted element is an atlas presenting observed climate change impacts and future risks from global to regional scales.
So readers can examine the issue across different geographic scales instead of seeing only one global picture.
Exactly. The atlas is one way the assessment organizes information about observed impacts and future risks across those scales.
How should I interpret the IPCC's role here? Is it making a new forecast from scratch?
The supplied description presents the IPCC as an assessing body. Its reports are produced through comprehensive, objective, and transparent processes intended to reflect the range of views in the scientific literature.
So the method is synthesis, integration, and assessment.
Exactly. That is why the report can address physical impacts, adaptation, vulnerability, and connections among environmental and human systems. The central result is not one dramatic number. It is a way of understanding the problem. Climate impacts, ecosystems, biodiversity, and human societies are interconnected.
So if I came looking for one statistic that tells me what to do, I would miss the point.
Yes, the report emphasizes a systems view. It assesses impacts and risks while asking how societies can adapt and how those responses relate to reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
And that is where climate-resilient development comes in.
Right. The report uses that idea for a process in which adaptation and emissions reduction come together in support of a livable future for biodiversity and humankind.
That changes the usual mental model. I thought emissions reduction was about future problems, while adaptation was basically damage control.
The report's framing pushes beyond that split. It treats the two as connected parts of climate-resilient development.
What about the atlas you mentioned?
It adds another important element of the assessment, a structured view of observed climate change impacts and future risks across global and regional scales.
So the report deliberately looks at more than one scale.
Correct. We should not invent specific regional findings from the excerpt, but the report explicitly recognizes the value of presenting impacts and risks from global to regional levels.
Then the main takeaway from the results is integration.
Integration across systems, disciplines, and geographic scales. That is the organizing insight that makes the report more than a catalog of separate climate problems. So what should a student, worker, manager, or voter carry away from this?
Maybe that climate decisions should not be judged by one question alone.
Exactly. If a plan only asks, does this reduce emissions? Or only asks, does this help us cope with impacts? It may be too narrow for the problem this report describes.
A better question would be, how does this choice affect resilience, ecosystems, biodiversity, and people together?
That is closer to the report's perspective. Climate-resilient development connects adaptation, emissions reduction, and the conditions for a livable future.
Could that apply to professional decisions too?
At a general level, yes. If an organization is considering infrastructure, services, investment, or community planning, this framework encourages decision-makers to look for interactions rather than treating climate risk as one isolated box.
But this abstract does not give a ready-made checklist for every company or city.
Correct. The supplied evidence supports the framework, not a universal recipe. The practical value is the perspective shift.
Which is?
Do not ask only how to respond to climate impacts, and do not ask only how to cut emissions. Ask how adaptation and emissions reduction can work together while considering the linked human and ecological systems affected by the decision.
So, resilience is not just one isolated environmental objective.
In this report's framing, the bigger goal is climate-resilient development that enables a livable future for both biodiversity and humankind.
That makes the opening choice easier to answer. The strongest plan may not be choosing between adaptation and emissions reduction at all.
Exactly. The deeper lesson is to stop treating them as separate worlds when the climate, ecosystems, biodiversity, and human societies we are trying to protect are connected.